wind swept through the quiet suburban streets of Crestwood, rattling the bare branches like skeletal fingers. Halloween night had arrived with its usual chaos, children darting from house to house in costumes too big for their tiny frames, laughter mixing with the crackle of fallen leaves under hurried footsteps. Yet, in the corner of this cheerful chaos, something dark waited, something patient. Karen Swift adjusted the scarf around her neck, her fingers trembling slightly despite the mild autumn chill. She had spent the evening preparing for a small gathering, an attempt to feel normal after a year that had left her life fractured. The soft glow of her porch light cast long shadows across the driveway, flickering as if signaling her to hurry inside. She fumbled with her keys, heart beating faster with every creak of the front door. Across the street, a figure lurked in the shadows. Motionless at first, but always observing. The outline was human, yet the way it moved suggested a predator more than a man. Every detail of Karen's movements was noted, the slight hitch in her step, the way she clutched her keys like a lifeline. This wasn't the work of a random criminal. It was meticulous, planned, personal. Karen entered her home and immediately felt a shiver crawl up her spine. Something was off. The familiar scent of her living room, usually comforting, now carried a subtle undertone, metallic, cold, alien. She tried to dismiss it as nerves, a Halloween-induced paranoia. But deep down, she knew. She wasn't alone. The first sound came from the kitchen, a low, almost imperceptible scraping. Karen froze, eyes darting to the doorway. Her phone was on the counter, but it felt miles away. She wanted to call for help, but the urge to survive told her to move quietly, to stay unseen. Step by cautious step, she approached the source of the sound, each movement deliberate, silent. Then it hit her. The window above the sink was slightly ajar, though she remembered locking it earlier. A faint reflection in the glass showed a shadow slipping away, not fast, calculated, controlled. Her pulse raced. Whoever or whatever was here. They had been inside, watching, waiting. Karen grabbed a kitchen knife, her hand shaking violently. She backed into the living room, heart hammering, every sense screaming danger. The shadows seemed to grow longer, reaching for her. She barely noticed the front door creak again, subtle, almost polite, but a sound that tore through her fear like a blade. Outside, the figure moved closer, blending seamlessly with the night. Its patience was unnerving. Every step Karen took to secure herself was anticipated. The predator wasn't just in the house. It had orchestrated the entire night to corner her, to isolate her. A sudden knock at the door startled her, louder than anything before. Karen's breath caught in her throat. Instinct told her not to answer, but curiosity, or perhaps a foolish sense of control, forced her to approach. Another knock, faster this time. The sound was hollow, echoing, as if the house itself was warning her. She reached the door and peered through the peephole. Nothing. A cold gust of wind pushed the door slightly, and in that split second, a hand, gloved, firm, and merciless, slammed against her chest, knocking her backward. Karen screamed, a raw, piercing sound that cut through the night. The lights flickered violently, plunging the room into a chaotic dance of shadows and flashes. From the corner of her eye, she saw movement. Swift, deliberate. The attacker was inside now, a silent storm of intent and violence. She fought, clawing, kicking, desperate to escape, but the house seemed to shrink around her, corners closing, doors locking themselves in her mind. Panic surged. Survival instincts took over. Then came the voice, low, distorted, yet oddly familiar. "You shouldn't have let your guard down, Karen." Her stomach dropped. Recognition and terror collided. This wasn't a stranger. This was someone who knew her, someone who had studied her, understood her routines, her fears, her vulnerabilities. Karen made a desperate dash toward the back door, but it was too late. The figure blocked her path, calm, controlled, lethal, every second stretched like an eternity. The knife in her hand felt useless against the inevitability closing in. Outside, the neighborhood remained oblivious. Laughter, music, footsteps, all masking the horror unfolding behind the walls of the Swift residence. By the time anyone noticed the street had gone silent, it would be too late. The predator moved with precision, leaving behind only the evidence of fear, chaos, and one life hanging in the balance. Karen's last thought wasn't of her friends, or the police, or even of the Halloween festivities. It was simple, primal, a whisper in the darkness. Why me? And then, silence. The house settled as if nothing had happened. The lights flickered once more, then steadied. Outside, the wind carried away the echoes of a scream that no one would hear in time. Halloween in Crestwood would never be the same again. The night had claimed its victim, and the shadow remained, patient, watching, waiting for the next moment to strike. The night after Karen Swift's disappearance, Crestwood felt different. The streets, usually alive with laughter and the scent of pumpkin spice, were muted, as if the town itself held its breath. Neighbors whispered behind drawn curtains, speculation ricocheting through the community like static electricity. Everyone knew something terrible had happened, but no one knew the full story. Detective Lucas Brandt arrived at the Swift residence shortly after sunrise. His face, sharp and worn from years of unsolved cases, betrayed no emotion, though his eyes scanned every inch of the house with meticulous care. The first thing he noticed was the disorder. A faint struggle in the living room, overturned chairs, a broken lamp. Yet strangely, there was no sign of forced entry. Whoever had taken Karen had planned this carefully. Lucas crouched by the open window in the kitchen, noting the slight scuff marks on the sill. Not just inside, he muttered under his breath. Outside observer, maybe someone who knew the layout. Too precise to be random. The neighbor across the street, Mrs. Caldwell, shuffled forward, wringing her hands. I heard screams, she stammered, voice trembling. I thought it was kids at first, but it wasn't. It was horrible. Then, silence. Lucas nodded. Did you see anyone? She shook her head violently. No, just shadows, too fast, too quiet, like they were watching. Lucas's gut tightened. Shadows, the same word that haunted him in every unsolved case. There was a predator at work, one who thrived in darkness, moving through the edges of fear itself. Meanwhile, inside the house, Karen's laptop lay open on the coffee table. An email caught Lucas's eye, a cryptic message from someone named Evelyn, subject line. We know everything. No content, just that haunting line. Whoever sent it wasn't a stranger. They were taunting, challenging. Someone close to Karen, or someone who had been watching her for weeks, maybe months. Lucas's phone buzzed. It was Officer Raines from the local precinct. Detective, we found something strange, he said, voice tight. A blood trail, leading to the woods behind the Swift property. But it disappears halfway, like whoever did this knew exactly where to go to cover their tracks. Lucas's jaw tightened. Bring me there. The woods behind the house were dense, the trees stretching high like silent sentinels. Moonlight barely penetrated the canopy, casting eerie shadows across the forest floor. Lucas crouched by the trail, tracing it carefully. Broken branches, scattered leaves, faint traces of blood, and then a torn piece of fabric snagged on a branch, the orange and black threads unmistakable. Karen's scarf. He froze. Whoever had done this wanted her to be found. Just enough. A message. A taunt. A predator playing a game. Hours passed, and the investigation deepened. Lucas interviewed friends, co-workers, even the mailman who had delivered a package that Karen hadn't picked up yet. Everyone mentioned the same thing. Karen had seemed anxious for weeks. Calls that went unanswered, nervous glances at unknown visitors, sometimes disappearing for hours without explanation. But no one had seen a threat directly. No one could name a suspect. Back in the shadows, the predator watched. Hidden, silent, always calculating. Every move the police made was anticipated. Every question Lucas asked had already been answered in the predator's mind. There was a pattern here, a method, and the more the law tried to close in, the more elusive it became. Lucas returned to the precinct, rubbing his eyes. The pieces didn't fit yet, but one thing was clear. This was not just a simple abduction. There was history here, dark, twisted history, and someone wanted it exposed. Meanwhile, Karen woke with a start. The room she was in was small, windowless, and cold. The smell of damp concrete filled her nostrils, her wrists were bound, and a thin blanket covered her legs. Panic surged through her, but she forced herself to think, observing the room, noting every crack, every shadow, every potential escape route. The door creaked. Footsteps, slow, deliberate. Karen froze, pressing herself into the corner. The shadow that entered the room was tall, movements precise, confidence radiating like a predator claiming its territory. "You're awake," a low voice said, calm yet laced with menace. "Good. It's time we talked." Karen's mind raced. Who was this? What did they want? Why her? Questions spiraled, but the predator didn't answer. Not yet. Instead, they circled the room, eyes never leaving her. The air was thick with tension, the kind that seeps into your bones and refuses to leave. Hours passed. Every word, every movement from the captor was calculated, designed to unnerve. Yet Karen noticed cracks, too. Tiny mistakes, micro-expressions, hesitations that hinted at humanity beneath the shadow. A detail she would need to exploit if she hoped to survive. Outside, the town slept, oblivious. But Detective Lucas Brandt felt the unease gnawing at him, the sense that every second wasted brought Karen closer to something worse than anyone could imagine. And deep down, he knew. The shadow was patient. It always was. As dawn approached, Karen made her first careful observation of the room, mentally mapping escape routes. The predator had underestimated her, and that would be their first mistake. The game had only begun, and the night's nightmare was far from over. Detective Lucas Brandt had barely slept. Every detail from the Swift case played on a loop in his mind. The blood trail vanishing into the woods, the cryptic email from Evelyn, the precise and methodical nature of the predator. There was a pattern here, he was certain, one that someone with intimate knowledge of Karen's life had orchestrated. He pored over Karen's phone records again. Missed calls, strange messages, late-night notifications from apps she didn't usually use. A location pinged him, a cafe she had visited 2 weeks prior. Lucas decided to check it out. At the cafe, baristas shook their heads. She came in briefly, one said, seemed nervous, kept looking over her shoulder, left in a hurry. Alone. Nothing more. But Lucas's instincts told him the predator was closer than anyone imagined. Someone she trusted, or someone who had watched her for months, was playing a game, and the rules were terrifyingly clear. No one was safe. Meanwhile, Karen was learning about her captor. Hours of observation had taught her small but crucial things. The way they paused before speaking, the tiny inconsistencies in their routine, the rhythm of their footsteps. The predator wasn't just dangerous, they were meticulous, almost obsessive. But obsessiveness left cracks, and Karen was determined to find them. A sound from the corner of the room caught her attention, a small box previously unnoticed. Carefully she inched closer. Inside were photographs. Karen at work, Karen shopping, Karen walking her dog, each photo marked with dates, times, locations. This wasn't random stalking. This was targeted. The predator knew everything, every move, every interaction, every secret. Fear threatened to consume her, but she forced herself to think strategically. One wrong move could be fatal. She memorized the floor plan, noted the weak locks, the loose floorboard near the window. Every detail mattered. Every detail might be her salvation. Back at the precinct, Lucas pieced together a chilling possibility. The email from Evelyn was no accident. Whoever sent it knew Lucas would investigate. It was a trap, a challenge. And if Karen didn't escape soon, the predator could vanish before law enforcement could catch them. He felt the familiar gnawing frustration of a case slipping through his fingers. Hours later, a break came, a witness. A delivery driver remembered a car parked near the woods behind the Swift house, a black SUV with tinted windows, license plate partially obscured. Lucas raced to the precinct database, pulling partial plate matches. One name surfaced: Evelyn Carter, a private investigator, or perhaps someone who had assumed that identity. The pieces began to form, but nothing concrete. Yet. Back in the dark room, Karen tested her limits. She had observed, memorized, and planned. As the captor slept, or appeared to sleep, she inched toward the window, one hand on the sill, one on the floorboard. Her heart pounded, every sound magnified. Then, the door creaked. The predator was awake, returning unexpectedly. Karen froze. The shadow stopped mid-step, almost sensing her movement. A tense silence filled the room, stretching seconds into what felt like eternity. Then a voice, calm but taunting. "Trying to escape already? You're clever. For now." Karen's mind raced. Clever wasn't enough. She needed more. More information, more leverage, more time. Suddenly, the predator revealed a startling twist. "You didn't think this was random, did you? It's not about fear alone. It's about revenge. Someone close to you, someone who trusted you, is involved." Karen's mind whirled. Revenge? Who? She had no enemies, or so she thought. But every thought, every suspicion could be a trap. One wrong accusation, and the predator would punish her in ways unimaginable. Outside, Detective Lucas made a breakthrough. He cross-referenced Karen's recent interactions, a network of friends, colleagues, and acquaintances. One name consistently appeared: a former colleague, someone who had a grudge, a motive. Evelyn Carter, or someone using her identity? The puzzle pieces aligned, and for the first time, Lucas felt a surge of hope. He had a lead, and he would follow it to the end. Meanwhile, Karen noticed another clue in the room: a series of post-it notes hidden under the photographs, small scribbled messages, locations, times, instructions. The predator was playing a meticulous game, expecting her to decode it. It was a test, a challenge, and the stakes were life or death. As night fell again, the tension in the room was unbearable. Karen prepared mentally, planning her next move carefully, aware that any misstep could be fatal. The predator, for all their meticulous planning, had underestimated her will to survive. And Detective Lucas, piecing together the first real thread of the mystery, had no idea just how close he was to uncovering the truth, or how deadly the confrontation would soon become. The shadow moved silently through the house, unaware that its carefully orchestrated plan was about to face a variable it hadn't accounted for: Karen Swift herself. The room was silent except for Karen's shallow breaths. The predator had stepped out, or at least that was what she hoped. Every muscle tensed, every sense heightened. The post-it notes, photographs, and scattered clues weren't just reminders of fear. They were her roadmap, a map that might lead her out of the nightmare. Karen crouched near the window, testing the latch. It gave slightly, a whisper of hope. Outside, moonlight illuminated the backyard, a mix of shadows and obstacles. The chill of the night bit at her skin, but adrenaline fueled her resolve. Every second counted. Every second could be her last. Meanwhile, Detective Lucas Brandt had followed the lead from the previous night to a secluded cabin on the outskirts of Crestwood. A manila envelope sat on the passenger seat of his car. Inside, Photos of Karen tied up in the very room Lucas had been investigating. The handwriting on the back of each photo was eerily precise. "You're close. Too close." Lucas's pulse quickened. The predator wasn't just cunning, they were confident. They wanted him involved, wanted the chase, wanted the tension. But Lucas wasn't about to let the predator win. He examined the cabin carefully. Footprints, a discarded glove, and faint tire tracks leading into the forest confirmed what he already feared. Karen was somewhere nearby, and every move she made was orchestrated to lure him. Back at the house, Karen made her move. The window creaked open just enough to slip through. Her heart pounded with every step across the backyard, the cool grass crunching softly beneath her bare feet. She glanced back. No shadow. Yet every instinct screamed danger. The predator could be anywhere. She reached the edge of the woods, recalling the blood trail Detective Lucas had traced earlier. It was faint in the moonlight, but she remembered it well. If she could follow it? No, if she could mislead the predator and reach the road, help might be possible. Inside, the predator returned sooner than expected. The faint sound of snapping twigs alerted Karen, and she ducked into the underbrush. She held her breath, watching as the figure moved methodically across the yard, eyes scanning, but failing to see her vanish into the shadows. The predator's patience was extraordinary, yet Karen's instincts were sharper tonight. Survival demanded it. Lucas, meanwhile, pieced together another layer of the puzzle. He cross-referenced Evelyn Carter's supposed identity with Karen's social circle. Patterns emerged, transactions, messages, even subtle manipulations of Karen's daily routine. Someone close to Karen had not just a grudge, but the skills to execute this terrifying plan. Karen moved silently through the forest, the cool air biting her lungs. She spotted a faint trail leading toward a service road, the sound of distant cars her lifeline. But the predator wasn't far behind. The snapping of a branch, subtle but deliberate, signaled pursuit. She had no choice but to increase her pace. The predator's voice echoed through the trees, low and mocking. "You're clever, but clever doesn't survive forever." Karen's mind raced. Every step, every choice could tip the balance. She remembered the floorboard she had noticed earlier, a small, loose plank she could have pried to create a weapon or a distraction. It was risky, but desperation fueled her courage. With a swift motion, she dislodged it and hurled it toward a distant tree. The predator's attention snapped to the noise, just long enough for Karen to gain precious distance. Lucas was driving fast, scanning the forest for any sign of the black SUV. He knew time was critical. Every second Karen remained in the predator's grasp increased the danger exponentially. His instincts screamed that he was close, closer than he had been on any case in years. Karen burst onto the service road, lungs burning, legs trembling. The lights of an approaching car shimmered in the distance, hope, tangible and fragile. She ran toward it, waving her arms frantically. The predator, slowed by the diversion, cursed under their breath. They were meticulous, yes, but unpredictability, Karen's will to survive, was a variable they hadn't anticipated. Lucas's radio buzzed urgently. "Detective, Karen's on the move. She's heading toward the North Service Road." Lucas slammed the brakes, lights cutting through the night. "Hold on, Karen, I'm coming." His vehicle tore down the road, tires crunching over gravel, every instinct sharp, honed by years of chasing criminals who underestimated him. The predator retreated into the shadows, furious but calculating. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. Karen had survived her first move, but she was far from safe. The predator's game had shifted, and now the stakes were higher than ever. Karen slid into Lucas's car, breathless, soaked in sweat and fear. His hand was steady, gripping the wheel, but his eyes revealed the tension of a man who knew the nightmare wasn't over. "You're safe. For now," he said. But both knew, in this game of predator and prey, safe was only a temporary illusion. As the car sped away, the predator's shadow lingered in the trees, watching, waiting, planning. The hunt wasn't finished, and Crestwood would soon realize the full scope of the terror that had invaded its streets. The first rays of dawn barely pierced the dense forest as Lucas Brandt's SUV tore down the service road. Karen Swift sat beside him, trembling, but her eyes burned with a mix of fear and determination. This nightmare had lasted too long, and now the hunter and the hunted were about to collide with the truth. "Do you know who did this?" Lucas asked, voice tight, focused. Karen shook her head. "No, but they knew everything about me, every move, every routine, like they were inside my head." Lucas clenched his jaw. "I've traced the SUV, the clues, the emails. Someone used the name Evelyn Carter, but it's not her. Someone close, someone with access to your life." Karen's mind raced. Faces flashed. Friends, colleagues, neighbors. Then it hit her. Mark Donovan. A former colleague she had trusted. Fired months ago after a bitter argument over a project. He had motive, skill, and, most importantly, obsession. Lucas's radio buzzed. "Detective, SUV spotted. Abandoned near the old mill. We may have a lead." The old mill loomed ahead, silent and foreboding, its rusted metal walls whispering secrets of 100 forgotten nights. Lucas parked a safe distance away. He and Karen approached on foot, moving quietly, senses alert. The predator was inside, waiting, or perhaps unaware. Inside the mill, shadows danced across the walls as Karen's footsteps echoed. A figure emerged from the darkness, tall, lean, eyes cold and calculating. The predator, the hunter who had orchestrated every second of fear, every whispered threat, every cryptic clue. Karen froze, heart pounding. Recognition struck like lightning. "Mark." Her voice trembled but carried a steel she didn't know she possessed. Mark Donovan's lips curved into a twisted smile. "Clever girl. I wondered if you'd figure it out before the end." His tone was calm, almost cordial, but it carried menace. "You took my work, my reputation, and I lost everything because of you. I wanted to watch you feel the fear I felt, piece by piece." Lucas stepped forward, gun drawn. "Step away from her, Mark. It's over." Mark's eyes flicked to Lucas, then back to Karen. "Over? No. This is the culmination. The game isn't over until I say it is." Suddenly, Mark lunged, a knife glinting in the dim light. Karen reacted instinctively, grabbing a rusted pipe from the floor. Metal clashed with steel. Sparks flew. Her hands burned, adrenaline surging, but she held her ground. Lucas fired a warning shot. The bullet ricocheted harmlessly off a wall, but Mark hesitated, just enough for Karen to strike. The pipe hit his arm, forcing him back, and in that split second, Lucas tackled him to the ground. The struggle was brutal, but brief. Karen's survival instincts, combined with Lucas's training, overpowered the predator. Mark was restrained, breathing heavily, eyes wide with disbelief. He had planned meticulously, but he had never accounted for Karen's resilience. As the police arrived to take Mark into custody, Karen sank to the floor, exhausted, shaking, tears streaking her face. Lucas knelt beside her. "You're safe now," he said softly. Karen nodded, her mind still racing. He hated me so much. He wanted to make me feel every second of fear he felt." Lucas's eyes hardened. "He wanted revenge, but you survived. That's what matters. You weren't just a victim. You were a fighter." Outside, the first light of morning bathed the town in a soft glow. Halloween's chaos had ended, leaving a community shaken but alive. Karen walked away from the mill, supported by Lucas, aware that the nightmare had left scars, but also newfound strength. Mark Donovan was taken away, his obsession and rage confined behind bars. But the echo of fear, the shadow of that night, would linger in Karen's memory. And in that lingering shadow, She found a hard-earned clarity. She had survived the darkness, and nothing, not even the most meticulous predator, could ever take that away. The town of Crestwood slowly returned to life, but Karen Swift knew something vital. The hunter's game might have ended, but courage, resilience, and vigilance were hers to keep forever. Halloween would never feel safe again, but Karen had reclaimed herself from the shadows.